In maintenance map number 2, we're going to focus on your lower body with the mini softball foot treatment, the rebalance sequence, and the lower body length and low back release sequence. This map directly addresses low back pain and hip pain, and it's the indirect approach for neck and shoulder pain. Let's start with the mini softball foot treatment. I want you guys to stand with your feet side by side. Remember, no using two common senses that really do help us keep us balanced and stable. Keep your arms at your side and close your eyes. I'm going to know if you have your eyes open, so make sure you keep your eyes closed. Give yourself permission to go into your body and sense what you feel. Without moving, I want you to notice the floor under your feet. Just notice if it feels like you've got more weight on your right foot or your left foot, or if you're noticing a region of either of your feet. Perhaps you're noticing the outside of your left foot or the ball of your right foot, or maybe it's the heel on the left side. Just notice if any region of your foot is calling itself out to you. Then, using your body sense, scan up your legs and notice if you're clenching your thighs or butt cheeks, or if you're locking out your knees. If you feel like you can relax any excess tension, you're now assessing what it feels like when your autopilot is functioning a little inefficiently. You're already working so hard to remain standing. Imagine how hard your body works when you move. I want you to draw your awareness back down to your feet. Even though you know your feet are side by side, notice if it feels like one foot is stepping in front of the other in this standing position. That again is autopilot inefficiency. Now that we've assessed your general position, let's start our foot treatment with position point pressing. I'm going to have you start on your right foot. We'll do it on our left foot so it's easier for you to follow. Now if you need to, watch Pam. She's going to do this seated, so you choose if you'll stand or stay seated to do this entire sequence. Start by stepping right on position point number 1 at the center of your right foot. Once you get the ball there, I want you to put your feet side by side and begin shifting your body weight from your left foot onto the right foot. Do this 5 to 10 times so that you can prepare your body for the compression you're creating, and notice if you feel any pain. If every time you put body weight onto the ball, you feel a sense of pain, remember that's your cue to ease back pressure, not step harder. Also, don't help your autopilot identify where your center of gravity is. Keep your hands off of your hips as you do this compression. Once you find a place where you can create tolerable compression without any pain, I want you to remain standing, and let's help your autopilot reacquire its connection to your center of gravity by moving our joints around our body. Remember, your autopilot kind of functions like a GPS system, so as you start to move your joints around, it helps your autopilot reclaim its connection to your center of gravity by identifying where your other joints are. Come back up to an upright position. Take your left foot and step backward. Let's go to position point number 5, just in front of the heel, and create gentle pressure. Remember, you can either do this by lunging your knee forward or by creating the step forward. Take a nice focused breath into that point. Then ease back half of your weight so that you have evenly distributed weight between your left and right foot, and let's try your glide. Slowly keep your pressure constant and begin gliding the ball back and forth right underneath position point 5. Remember, the secret of a glide is consistent pressure. All you're doing is preparing the connective tissue for the next technique called shearing. So let's continue the glide and slowly work over your heel. You remember the definition of a glide is to keep compression in one small local region of your body, and right now that's your heel. Once you work all the way to the end of your heel, slowly work your way back to position point number 5. When you get the ball back to position point number 5, sustain a tighter compression and create shearing. Remember, this is kind of like a short wiggling motion. Watch how I let my whole leg come with me so that I cause no extra pressure on my knee, my hip, or my back. And remember, you could always do this seated so that you take all of the pressure off of any of your other joints. Once you create that small local compression technique to influence some fluid exchange in the foot itself, you'll compress and wait. Remember, that's the secret of really creating the fluid exchange. Once you create the shear, is just pause for a moment and give the tissue time to adapt. Take a focused breath, and now let's rinse. Start with the ball at the ball of your big toe, position point number 2. Create consistent pressure and let the ball go all the way over your heel, and then just step forward so you take weight off your other leg. Step backward, go to the second number 2 underneath your second toe, and again rinse. Let's keep rinsing from each toe all the way down to the heel so that each toe gets one rinsing motion. And remember, when you get to that pinky toe, make sure that your pressure stays nice and constant all the way down. And just for the heck of it, let's do 2 more rinsing passes anywhere you want underneath the bottom of your foot. Just pick 2 more spots. And then let's try one last technique called friction. This one requires the balance. Standing on your left leg, I want you to very lightly rub the ball underneath the bottom of your foot. Just nice, light, vibrational motion. Just rub the ball right underneath the bottom of your foot. Any random place. Take a nice breath in and exhale. Let's reassess. Bring your feet side by side again. Now you might notice that your foot feels different because we were just rolling our foot with a ball, but let's reassess using our body sense. Bring your arms at your side and close your eyes. I want you to notice both of your legs. Forget about your foot for a moment. Draw your awareness up the chain of your leg. Remember, when connective tissue is hydrated, it allows the joints more openness and freedom. So notice your left leg for a moment. You might be really aware that you have an absence of fluid in your hip, your knee, and your ankle because you're aware that you actually have joints in your leg. But on the leg that you melt, ideally it's more open and free feeling. Ideally it feels more grounded and just more rooted to the floor. Open up your eyes. Do you guys feel that fluid exchange? If you feel that fluid exchange, we're already on our way to releasing our low back. Let's try the same thing on your other foot. So you're going to take the ball underneath the center of your left foot. Remember, position point number 1 will always be your starting position. Place your foot on the ball and begin to shift your weight to the right and then gently ease compression into the left foot. Remember what it felt like on the other side. You might notice that this side's even more tender. So just take your time and find tolerable pressure. Remember, pain is your cue. You're going too deep, too fast. Once you find a place where you can tolerably compress the ball without inflicting pain, sustain your pressure, and once again, let's help the autopilot reacquire its connection to your center of gravity by moving your joints anywhere around your body. Take some focused breaths as you create this movement. Then when you're ready, come on back up to a nice upright position, and let's take our right foot and step backward, and let's bring that ball to position point number 5, just in front of your heel. Create that gentle compression right onto the ball, either by just bending your knee forward or creating that consistent pressure straight down. Now ease back half of the pressure so you have even weight distributed to both legs, and let's try your glide. Keep the forefoot on the ground and let that ball go back and forth against position point number 5. So remember, this is kind of like doing the twist. Notice how our toes stay down on the ground rather than having your toes move and the heel stays in place. It's the heel that's swaggering over the ball. Slowly work that ball all the way over your heel until you get to the back side of your heel. Once you get to the back of your heel, slowly work your way back to that position point number 5. And when you get back to position point number 5, tighten the wiggle for the shear. So remember, shearing is like washing your hair. It's like you're increasing the volume of space that fluid can occupy in the connective tissue. This is what's going to create this fluid exchange that we're going to draw throughout the entire body. And remember, once you create a shear force, you wait. Just create gentle pressure. Take a nice focused breath. And now let's rinse from toe to heel. Remember, the secret of a rinse is staying consistent in your pressure and just allowing the ball to stay constantly moving from toe to heel. Step over the ball so that your other hip doesn't get tired. And remember, watch how Pam does this on the chair. It's just about creating that consistent pressure. It doesn't have to be heavy. It's just about the direction. It's always toe to heel. Pick 2 more areas under your foot to create that rinsing pass, and 1 more. And here we go with our friction. Remember, balance on your right leg and very lightly create that light frictional motion underneath the bottom of your foot. Remember, if you only had 1 minute a day to help yourself, I would want you to do friction on one side, take a focused breath, swap sides, go over to your other foot, create the friction again. See if you can do friction 2 times on both sides for about 10 seconds. Let's try it 1 more time on both feet. Very lightly rubbing your foot. So remember, friction is another way to stimulate some fluid exchange in the superficial layers of your connective tissue. It also stimulates a little bit of natural blood flow throughout the body. Let's try it on the other foot 1 more time. Take a nice focused breath and then let it go. Let's reassess. Bring your feet side by side. Remember, use body sense, not your common sense of touch or vision. Arms at your side and close your eyes. Using your body sense, tune back into your feet. Notice if now your feet feel more cohesive, if you feel less offset from left to right. Scan up your legs. Notice if your legs feel more relaxed or if you're not locking out your knees. Draw your awareness back down to your feet. If before you felt like you had a staggered leg position, notice if now your feet really feel stable and grounded into the floor. Take a nice focused breath and open your eyes. Now that our body's more grounded, let's continue with our map with the rebalance sequence. To start our rebalance sequence, let's start with the rest assess. Lie on your back with your palms faced up and your arms and legs extended. Using your body sense, I want you to assess the 4 common imbalances that cause all the compression along the spine. Remember, if you feel like all of your upper back weight is weighted just across the upper 1/3 part of your back, if your mid-back feels arched off the floor, if your tailbone feels more weighted to the ground than your butt cheeks, or the back of the thighs feel off the floor, you've just assessed accumulated stress living in your body that could be causing you compression in your neck or low back. Remember to also divide yourself into a left and a right half and assess your autopilot. I want you to notice if one entire side of your body feels more weighted on one side or the other, or if one leg feels longer. If you're noticing either of these two things, that's called autopilot inefficiency. And you'll remember that just simply means your autopilot's having a hard time identifying where your center of gravity is. Now, I really want you to pay attention here to what the curve of your low back feels like and what the back of your thighs feel like before we begin, because we're going to be focusing on the lower body throughout this sequence. Take a nice focused breath into your body. What you've just done is stimulate your autopilot by contracting your own diaphragm. Try it one more time. Take a nice focused breath. When you're ready, turn on your side, come on up to sitting, and I want you to lie the length of your roller from head to tail. Remember, you can either sit at the end of your roller like James and Megan are doing, or you can bring the roller behind the side of your hip and slowly roll yourself back like Pam and Roshan do. Remember, once you get up onto the top of the roller, touch the top of your head and make sure 100% you are on the top of that roller. Then place your arms along the side of the roller, and let's begin with your gentle rocking by tipping to the left and then to the right. Just slowly allow the masses to tip to either side. Remember, gentle rocking just allows your autopilot time to adapt to the compression we're creating on the spine, and also challenges the autopilot to go into action to keep you balanced and stable on this unstable surface. Then come back to a center point and let's try our pelvic tuck and tilt. Place your hands on the front of your pelvis like a triangle. And once you have your hands in place, begin tucking your pelvis under so your low back travels to the roller, and tipping your pelvis away so the back of the pelvis lands on the top of the roller. Remember, as you tuck, this is the differentiated motion. So as you tilt, you want to notice if your ribs come with you, or when you tuck, are you pushing into your feet, squeezing your butt cheeks, or lifting up your hips? Remember, keep your feet light, keep your ribs heavy, and continue to tuck and tilt your pelvis. This is how you help your autopilot reacquire its connection to your center of gravity by influencing the subtle motion of the pelvis and keeping it differentiated from the other masses. Try it 2 more times, gently tucking your pelvis under, and then tilting your pelvis away, and then coming back to a center point. Keep that neutral pelvis, and let's try the 3D breath breakdown. I want you to place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly. Nice and slowly, I want you to take some focused breaths into the front and back of your body, as if you're breathing depth into your torso. Remember, another way to help our autopilot reacquire its connection to your center of gravity is to influence movement of the diaphragm. Remember, these breaths don't have to be the fullest breaths you can take. You're just thinking about breathing into your body from a midline in 2 dimensions. On your next breath, place your hands on the sides of your ribs. And in the same fashion, I want you to breathe width into your body, expanding the ribs widthwise. And remember, not the biggest breaths you can take. It's just you thinking about moving the diaphragm that's influencing your autopilot to reacquire a new signal to your center of gravity. On your next breath, at your own pace, place one hand over your collarbones and one hand down onto your pubis bone. And in the same fashion, you're going to breathe that length breath from the midline up to the collarbones and down to the pelvis in equal timing. I want you to notice here as you're taking these focused breaths, if you're noticing your body subtly shifting or rocking on the roller. If you're noticing that subtle movement, don't stop it from happening. That is your autopilot reacquiring a new signal to your center of gravity as you influence the movement or oscillation of your diaphragm. Really good. Take one more focused breath there. And now let's try the 3D breath. Place your hands on the front of your belly. And I want you to take a nice focused breath into all 6 sides of your body and just let your natural breath come out. What you're not going to feel here, remember, is the reflexive mechanism. We're going to force the reflex into action by doing your 3D focused breath. You remember which sound made that connection the most dominant. I want you to take a nice full 6-sided breath, and on an exhale, make your sound. Shh. See if you can feel that subtle contraction in the abdomen. Try that 2 more times. A nice focused breath, and make your sound. Remember, if we do this correctly, there's a subtle hugging that occurs from all 6 sides of the torso. That's the natural reflex. Try it 1 more time. Nice focused breath, and make your sound. Now go back to nice natural breathing. Take a nice 3-dimensional breath. And on your exhale, let your natural exhale initiate the breath, but then consciously feel and follow and see if you can feel that same gentle contraction in the abdomen. Take another focused breath. And again, let your natural exhale initiate the breath and feel and follow. That's called finding your core. Now remember that because we're going to use it in the next sequence. When you're ready, place your hands on the ground. And when you're ready, I want you to straighten out one of your legs and very slowly slide your pelvis, then your ribs, and then your head off the roller and slide the roller out from underneath your spine. And let's reassess. Once again, lie flat on your back with your palms faced up and your arms and legs extended in your rest assess position. And I know it doesn't really feel like we do very much, but I want you to go back in and notice your masses and spaces. If before you felt like you had all of your upper back weight on the upper 1/3 part of your back, or if your mid-back felt very arched off the ground, you might notice now that your mid-back is entirely more weighted to the floor, releasing some new hydration to your neck and your low back. Also notice your pelvis and your legs. If before you were very aware that you were lying right on your tailbone, or you noticed the back of the thighs were off the ground, you might notice that just by doing this single sequence, your legs have settled to the floor or the pelvis is more weighted. But remember, this sequence is for one thing in particular. Divide yourself into a left and a right half and reassess your autopilot. If before you felt very weighted to one side or one leg feels longer, notice if now you feel more balanced from left to right. If you feel more balanced, your autopilot is functioning efficiently and we're ready to add the lower body length and low back release sequence. Take a focused breath. I want you to notice the curve of your low back. I want you to notice if you're more butt cheek or tailbone, and remember the back of the thighs. Notice if they're on or off the floor. Ideally, we'd like them to rest weighted to the ground so that we can release your low back. So when you're ready, bend your knees, take the roller underneath the back of your thighs, find your core, lift up your hips, and let's bring the roller underneath the back of your pelvis. Remember, you won't put the roller anywhere near your low back. So if you touch the top of your hips, ideally the top of your hip bones, those are on your side of the roller. Before we go into the SI shear, let's try a basic tuck and tilt, rolling the pelvis under so that your pelvis is heavy on your side of the roller, then subtly tilting your pelvis back onto the top of the roller. Let's try that 3 or 4 times, tucking, and watch how Pam keeps her ribs nice and relaxed as she creates the tilt. So remember, this is differentiation. We're going to be using both the position of a tuck and the tilt in all of the moves that you're about to perform. Let's start with the SI joint shear. Bring one knee and then the other up to a nice 90-degree angle. Remember, keep your heels slack to the butt cheeks as you do this. I want you to slightly tip your knees just a little bit to your right side. Remember, you're just going about an inch off of center, and you'll begin with your SI joint shear by creating small circles with both of your knees. Or you can circle the one knee that you're leaning toward. I don't care which way the circles go, just make sure that you don't feel any clicking, cracking, or popping in the joint. That would mean you'd need to slow down or make the movement smaller. The third way that you can create a shear at the SI joint is to just gently march your knees forward and back. This will create some hydration exchange along the side of the SI joint. And remember, once you create a shear, you're going to come back to a center point and wait for a moment. Give the tissue a moment to adapt, take a focused breath, and now let's come over to the other side. slightly tipping your knees over to your left side. Create that SI joint shear with both knees circling. Remember, keep your core engaged. Even though you're just moving your legs, your core has to stay engaged so that it's differentiated. Create the movement with one leg. So here, if you have a hard time keeping your ribs stable, doing one leg tends to keep the ribs more stable as you create the shear force. Or, if you want, you could march your knees forward and back. You can do 1, 2, or all 3 of these moves to create that hydration along the SI joint. And remember, once you create a shear, just pause for a moment, take a focused breath, and let's come back to the center. Now let's try the bent knee press. Set your right foot down to the ground. Now, as soon as you get your foot down onto the floor, that's where the foot will remain. I want you guys to interlace your hands over your opposite thigh, but you can either bring it over your shin or underneath the thigh if you have any knee problems. Don't cause too much pressure on the knee. Once you're in this position, remember the secret of doing the bent knee press is to tuck the pelvis towards your side of the roller and then take a focused breath and in equal timing, allow your right foot to compress to the ground as you draw your knee towards your chest. Inhale, ease back a little bit of the pressure. Make sure that that knee is still staying straight ahead. Don't let it swing out to the side. And try one more time. Remember, it's not so much about how hard you pull or push with your legs. It's about how specifically you sustain the tuck. Take one more breath in here. Exhale. And then let's let it go. Set your other foot down to the ground. And now your left foot is going to settle to the floor. The right knee is going to come into your chest. And remember, before you pull the knee toward the chest, I want you to focus on the tuck of your pelvis. So find your core, let the pelvis roll under, and then create the push-pull. Inhale, ease back a little pressure. Line that knee a little more to the midline. And try one more time. Create that push-pull. Take one focused breath here. Good. And then let it go. Set that foot down to the ground. Now let's try the hip to heel press. I want you to take your leg and extend it straight up into the air. Remember that the leg has to stay perpendicular to the roller. I don't want your leg to be overhead. Once you get your leg in the position, try to keep your knee as straight as you can and gently flex and point your ankle. Remember that if all you do is focus on one joint movement, you're going to get a stretch in the muscle, which is great, but not the intention of this move. So remember, to create the hip to heel length, we're going to send the heel up and then subtly tilt your pelvis onto the top of the roller. If you're doing that correctly, you're going to get a nice long tensional pull against the back of the leg. Inhale, ease back a little bit of your compression, and on an exhale, flex your foot and tip the pelvis onto the top of the roller to create your hip to heel press. You feel that? Take one more focused breath, and then let it go. Let's set that leg down to the ground. Let's bring your other leg straight up into the air. Again, once your leg comes up, I want you to flex and point your ankle a few times just to notice the pull in the calf. And then to create the length and the hydration effect, you're going to keep your leg flexed, the ankle stays lifted, and then tilt your pelvis onto the top of the roller gently. Remember, both hip bones are coming down and your ribs are staying still. Don't let your ribs lift up. Inhale, ease back a little pressure, and one more time, flex at your ankle and tilt at the pelvis. That's what's creating that two-directional tensional pull from hip to heel. Awesome. Set the feet back down to the ground. Now, let's try the pelvic tuck and tilt challenge. Bring your thighs back up to that 90-degree angle. If it feels like the roller is moved at all from where we started, just move the roller up or down to adjust so that it's in the right position. Then place your hands onto the fronts of your thighs. Remember, your fingertips will just point over the tips of the knees so that the arms remain straight. Gently press your thighs into your hands and begin to gently tuck your pelvis towards your side of the roller. Remember, the legs won't move forward or back in the tuck. And when you tilt, you're going to allow the pelvis to land on the top of the roller. But remember, keep your thighs compressed into your hands. Let's try it again. Tucking so that the thighs feel like they levitate up toward the ceiling, and tilting so that you allow the sit bones to go wide and the back of the pelvis to get heavy. Let's go 2 more times. Tucking. And then tilting. And one more time, try it again. Watch how Pam keeps her ribs nice and still as she creates that differentiated motion. Tilt the pelvis onto the top of the roller. Remember, that's where you're creating that compression like a s'mores, kind of squishing a marshmallow onto the top of the roller. Now let's try the low back release. Take a nice focused breath, and on an exhale, press your thighs into your hands, the ribs to the floor, and your pelvis to the top of the roller. This is the low back decompression. This is what's going to release the fluids to the low back. Inhale, ease back all 3 points of pressure. And try it again. Thighs to the hands, pelvis to the roller, ribs to the floor. One more time. Take a focused breath. And on an exhale, press your thighs to your hands, pelvis to the top of the roller, and ribs to the floor. Hold that position for 3, 2, 1. Bring your knees into your chest and slowly roll the roller out from underneath your pelvis, and let's reassess. Now let's see if you've released your own low back from that sequence. Remember, use your body sense and reassess your masses and spaces. If we've done a good job, I want you to draw your body sense to this mid-torso. If before your ribs felt very arched off the ground, now ideally that low back curve is small and distinctive, closer to the pelvis rather than under the ribs. You might also notice that your pelvis is more weighted to the ground and the back of the thighs might be entirely weighted to the floor. How many of you guys feel like you've released your low back from doing that sequence? Did you get it? Did you get it too? This is something so profound. If you can learn to release your low back with this sequence, this is one of the best ones you can do from day to day. So remember, take a focused breath and really allow your body to rest in this position for a moment. You did a great job with this map.